No! It's not where we're supposed to be. I'm going to take a look around. I don't want to be here! I won't do it! Whatever it is! From the smell of the air, England, 2003. Ugh. But something's odd about it. And where is everybody? Oh, for goodness sake!
My bedroom's messy. I should have made my bed.
Keep this in. Coward.
Hello, and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always, I am joined with...
Yes, hello, I'm a very animated Scott today, but not too animated. I'm just not going to move very much,
Hardly,
but I'm still
vaguely
animated.
Animated in the most technical sense.
Technically, just me doing this is more animated than anything we do in
You're
this
blowing
program.
the budget already. Stop. But yes, we are looking at something slightly different this week and next week on the podcast, as we're looking at the Scream of Shalka, which is like a 2003 internet animated Doctor Who story starring Richard E. Grant. And it was something we had talked about before on the podcast as like, hey, maybe this will be like a funny like April Fool's Day episode or something like that, you know, because it's not canon, it's kind of weird. And then Russell T Davies went ahead and just made it canon in this latest series of Doctor Who, where we, in the episode Rogue, see all the various regenerations of the Doctor. Richard E. Grant was there as one of the variations of the Doctor, which is, he said he included it as like a joke. It was like, it was supposed to just be funny, but which I kind of hate. But,
it's one of those things that just isn't canon. Whether or not it's the actual Shalka Doctor that was in Rogue is debatable. I don't think it is a Shalka Doctor. I think Richard E. Grant in Rogue is a pre-William Hartnell Doctor. This is a different incarnation. You know, Richard E. Grant has played two different incarnations of a Doctor. He played the 10th Doctor in the Curse of Fatal Death. So maybe
Curse
this
of Fatal Death has not been made canon yet. So, you know, like this was made canon, and this is the only version of his Doctor. This, with Richard E. Grant appearing, that's as close to it being canon as you can possibly get without somebody explicitly saying, "Remember when I had a sex robot of the Master?" You know, like that, there's no other real ways that you can get it. So it's canon in loose sense. It's kind of like Big Finish levels canon. I would stick it now. You know, but even then, it's kind of more canon than Big Finish because we actually see him. We've actually seen this guy in canon as the Doctor in a series episode of Doctor Who. You know, when has that ever happened with any Big Finish creature? Have we ever seen a Big Finish creature leak into Doctor Who yet?
No,
I don't think so.
Haven't. Just to put this out front, we are recording this on the 5th of November, so if you hear fireworks, it's probably at my end. There's nothing we can do about that, but it should be quiet enough, so hopefully it's not too big of a distraction. Just to put this out front.
If we seem really happy, it's because we haven't seen the US election results yet, because we were recording this before. But obviously this is going to come out after, like a week after. Maybe they're still counting the votes by then. Who knows?
I feel like this is going to be until Christmas.
I think it's going to be I kind of think it's going to be quick.
Because the last time it took until like mid-December.
It took 4 days.
Right?
No, it took 4 days. It took 4 days. It took until Saturday.
Okay.
Al Gore and Bush took until December. The 2000 election.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's the longest one I think in U.S. history, which I don't think is ever gonna really happen again.
Yeah.
Because they were really just fighting over Florida, but we'll see.
It's gonna be.
I kind of expect it to be quick, but
we'll see.
I've never been happier to not be American. But yeah, so we are looking at Scream of Shalka, Scream of the Shalka, really clunky title. Too many thes, one too many. It's in the wrong place. It's in the thes in the wrong. It should be The Scream of Shalka or Scream of Shalka.
It was
Scream of the
originally
Shalka.
going to be called The Scream of the Shalka.
Oh, even better. Double it up. Yeah. Yeah. But this was a web series,
Yes.
believe it or not, which I'm sure you will go into more detail of. But this this web series first aired on November 13th, 2003, a glorious Thursday day, which was 20 years, 11 months, and 22 days ago at the time of recording. We're coming up to the 21st anniversary.
Yep.
Of this, it might
Crazy.
when this comes out. Actually, might be the 21st anniversary of this thing.
This
November
episode
13th.
comes out
The
on
15th. So
yeah, so
this
2
is,
days.
just
Yeah.
past the 21st anniversary. Look at that. It's like we planned ahead. And at the time, the U.S. president. I don't really have much for on this day. It's basically just movies. The president was one George W. Bush, who we were just talking about. The 2000 election. Obviously, that's
of
how
course,
he
yeah.
became president. And Tony Blair was the PM, but for some reason I wrote his full name down in my notes as Sir Anthony Charles Linton Blair. There you go. He was the Labour Prime Minister, the most popular Labour Prime Minister ever. He even had more seats than Keir Starmer has now, which is insane to think about, because Keir Starmer's got a lot of seats. But we will turn our attention to the thing that really matters, not politics, movies. What are people going to see in the cinema in 2003, November 13? 2003 is a pretty freaking loaded year in cinema history. And I will say, in the United States and in the United Kingdom, it is the same movie.
2003.
That is number one.
So the Lord of the Rings movies are usually December releases, so it can't be Lord of the Rings. So I'm kind of out of ideas already. Maybe it's a Harry Potter. I doubt it. But
No, I don't think Harry Potter was out around this time.
I mean,
Pirates
the
of
third
Caribbean
one
was floating around. You
you
had
give me
it
a
is part of a massive trilogy of movies.
massive
Absolutely
trilogy.
huge trilogy of movies.
The
And you've got a lot of
Matrix.
trilogies. Ooh,
Is
but
it
which
the third
one?
Is it the third one?
And what's that one called?
I get confused because it's the same thing with the Dalek episodes. They're all called Revelations or Remembrance or
Yeah, you're very close.
Resurrection.
No, that was the fourth one.
See, we're all fucking now all these biblical names. Oh,
It was just it's like
Reloaded?
Reloaded was the second one. It was Revolutions, which was
Revolutions, okay.
Matrix number 3, which is a pretty fun movie. I kind of like it. It's an interesting one because obviously I never saw it when it came out in 2003 because I was 3 years old. But I like the whole Matrix trilogy. I love Matrix 4. I love the Matrix, but Matrix 3 takes the same note as Return of the King, which came out just the month after this, which is basically the whole movie's an action scene.
yeah.
And in Return of the King, it's kind of grand in scale, it's epic, and it's like exhilarating to watch. In Revolutions, it's a battle of what's the word I'm looking for here? Where you're running out of energy, and you've got oh my god, it's on the tip of my tongue. Battle for energy term. Battle for energy. Attrition. It's a battle of attrition. Because it's about, the big alien things coming down to the last city of the humans who are just in their mechs having to hold off until Neo can do his whole shtick. And it's a grind. And I think it's supposed to feel like a grind, though, because you're fighting against impossible odds. It's a fun movie. I like it. And it doesn't have the weird CGI men that Matrix 2 has, which really kind of takes you out of the movie.
Is Matrix 2 the one with the car chase?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And the twins.
So
Yeah.
I don't remember Matrix 3 too well. Bold
Matrix
choice.
3 is the one where Neo goes blind.
See, I don't even remember that.
Wow. It's a really big part.
And I watched it like 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow, man.
I'm
Love
not a
those
fan of the
movies.
second two movies. Well, the second and the third one. I've not seen the fourth one. I probably
Fourth
need
one's
to.
great. Fourth one's
Just
really
out,
good.
just
It's
out of pure curiosity, but
the fourth one is less connected to the original three and is more of a meta commentary
Yeah.
on the sequel reboots that studios keep wanting to make. And like the whole idea of the film is like the Matrix movies were games that got made, and Warner Brothers wants another Matrix game made, and so it's like, how the fuck do we make another Matrix game? What the fuck is it even going to be about? And it's got Freema Agyeman in it, very briefly, so that's cool.
yeah, because she worked with the sisters on Sense8.
On
didn't
Sense
she?
8,
Which
yes.
is another show I've not seen. Which
Never seen it. I watched a couple episodes in it. A lot of sex. Very sex-heavy show.
Yeah, it's a very gay show from what I hear.
It is, yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while since I saw the Matrix movies, about 5 years. Bold choice to release two Matrix movies in 1 year, because the
Yeah.
second one came out in the summer, and the third one came out roughly around this time. It's kind of weird.
It's crazy, the amount that they must have been working, but you kind of get something similar, again, with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Because... Two Towers, because they released it in December time, they bleed into January. So Two Towers is the #1 movie in January in the cinemas. And then you get into December, Return of the King comes. Warner Brothers making shit ton of money in 2003. Because they own Lord of the Rings and The Matrix.
Yeah.
They're on the top of their game in the early 2000s. God damn.
And now they're just the company that keeps on scrapping movies. Great times. David
Tax write-off,
Zaslav
you can
is
get more
doing
money.
such a great job.
I love
you-
Warner
are you-
Brothers Discovery.
Are you looking forward to the animated Lord of the Rings movie coming out next month? Which looks
kinda,
fucking
yeah.
shit.
Yeah, it was-
It's the fucking generic anime style characters,
Yeah.
and it just does not appeal to me. It looks cheap. It does not
Yeah,
look
that's
like.
what- That's what I was feeling. It was like, this doesn't, like, I was kind of excited when it got announced, like, oh shit, an animated Lord of the Rings movie. That sounds kind of cool. Then I saw the trailer. I saw like 5 seconds of the trailer and went, I don't think I'm going to watch that. Unless I hear
Yeah.
really good things, unless I hear superb things, I really don't think I'm going to watch it.
I really think we're out of good movies this year, because there's also Kraven the Hunter coming out
Sonic
this
3.
year.
Sonic 3.
I don't
Sonic
like the
3's
first.
gonna
I
save
only
it all,
saw
baby.
the first one.
Sonic
I did
3's
not
gonna
like
save
it.
it all. Sonic 3's gonna save it all. First one is I mean, they're not great. Not gonna lie, they are not very good movies. But Sonic 1 is kind of fun. Sonic 2, the Sonic stuff gets better. The human stuff gets exponentially worse. And I expect the same will be for Sonic 3. But it's got Shadow in it, so gotta go see that shit.
See, Sonic is not a franchise I ever got myself attached to. I occasionally watch some episodes of the cartoon shows like Sonic Underground, some Sonic X here
Yeah.
and there, but just never
Yeah,
gravitated towards it.
I don't have that strong of a love for Sonic. I have a lot of frustrated feelings towards Sonic and a lot of anger about Sonic. It's a franchise that continues to baffle me, and I hate a lot of the games that they make, but... it keeps pulling me back in. I am interested by it. So
It's kind of like Doctor Who for you. It always makes
it's
weird
much worse.
decisions.
It's much worse than
much
Doctor
worse
Who,
than Doctor Who.
But yeah. If
yeah.
I mean, really, you should be watching the Psychedelic Gaming Hobos playthroughs of the Sonic games, specifically games like Sonic Unleashed and things like that. I think those were some very good Let's Plays that are worth watching if you're interested. I'm not associated with that channel at all. I just want to give them a shout out. Psychedelic Gaming Hobos. I think
You just look very similar to one of the guys, but okay.
That's just racist. That's just because he's ginger.
Yeah. But yeah, we are talking about technically the 40th anniversary celebration for Doctor Who today, because this was made for the 40th anniversary, which is kind of wild. Are you ready to talk about
And
this? Or
you
is there
know
more?
what?
Yes?
You know what? It's better than the 60th.
I wouldn't quite go that far. It's better in the 30th.
This sucks.
It's better in the 30th. Dimensions in Time, which we've covered, the EastEnders crossover extravaganza. That was something else.
That was pretty interesting.
We talked about that for like 2 hours.
Yeah, it was an experience. I watched that. I ended up watching that so many times because obviously I watched it in my own time, and then we watched it again with the podcast. But then I was around at a friend's house, and I was like, "Here, let's watch this." And so I ended up watching it again, and it was a lot. It was a lot. I had a lot of time watching that.
Yeah, and the wild thing is, we recorded that podcast, and then like 2 weeks later, we went to Comic Con. And so, we saw Peter Davison, we saw Sylvester McCoy, Colin Baker, Paul McGann. And out of nowhere, Sylvester McCoy just brings it up, which was insane.
He was so bored. He was so tired of that crowd. And I was so upset because I was going to ask him, like, what are your memories of working on that? And then he fucking answers it without even me asking the question,
I love Sylvester McCoy. What
he was an energy. He was an energy that day. Yeah, for sure. But yes, I get that's all I have for On This Day in 2003. I was 3 years old, so I have no memories of this year at all, really.
I was 5, almost 6.
Wow,
I believe.
Old man.
Am I?
November 2003.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, your birthday is like December time. So
yeah, it gets confusing. I'm too old to figure
dates
stuff
are
out.
hard to keep track of. Is December before or after November? I can't remember.
Shut the fuck up. But anyway, begin this discussion, we have to talk about the official Doctor Who website, which launched in 1999, which is kind of wild. This is like the Wild West of the internet, where there's like 1 million web pages for absolutely everything. Nowadays, it's just like, 3 websites.
4 websites.
That's it.
Yeah.
Which, the internet really has shrunk. But back then, there was an official Doctor Who website, and by 2001, they came... Great year, by the way, 2001. Oof.
Memorable year.
By 2001, they came to an idea that maybe they could use the website to launch new Doctor Who animated episodes. And by animated episodes, I mean basically slideshows. I'm talking about stuff that's even less animated than Scream of a Shalka. It's basically just characters sliding around on screen. We realised that BBC Radio 4 had abandoned a script for a 7th Doctor audio drama. So the people running the website decided to grab it for themselves and turned it into a full audio production with still drawings running around like a PowerPoint. Which is fucking pretty ambitious, because this was the BBC's first ever webcast, and it is also considered to be the reason why BBC iPlayer launched in 2007. It was the idea of, people were actually interested in watching these animated slideshows on their computer. Why not put BBC programs onto a computer? Catch up after 7 days. Genius.
The thing that we have said for ages now in this podcast, the BBC has been at the forefront of the internet and streaming services before anybody else fucking got on top. The BBC iPlayer is an insane idea to come out with in the early 2000s. Nobody else was doing things like that, and everybody else copied them afterwards. Whoever was in charge of the BBC in the early 2000s, innovator. Honestly, an innovator, because things like that were future-proofing the BBC in a way that nobody else really saw at the time, Incredible.
Yeah, I just looked this up. Hulu released the same year, but I imagine it's like parallel
US.
thinking.
Yeah.
Hulu is kind of like BBC iPlayer, except it had like the 4 networks, Fox, CBS, NBC, and just had catch-up programs from all of those networks. On the DVD, by the way, there's a special feature about the Doctor Who website. I'm not going to go into all of it because most of it is irrelevant, but the guy who invented BBC iPlayer is interviewed on this documentary, and he seems lovely. like he's like, sometimes I'm on the plane and I catch people watching BBC iPlayer on their iPads, and that makes me happy. Which is, he sounds lovely.
Honestly, genius man, for sure.
He apparently had to pitch the concept of BBC iPlayer over 80 times. Just because nobody really understood how the fuck it would work. Oh, would this mean that people could now steal our programs if we put it up online? And you had to come up with the concept of like copyright protection and the idea of it being only available for 7 days and it being downloadable content, and that's a lot to work through, especially in 2007. This is an idea that he was trying to work out since like 2004 as well, so it was many years in the making. Insane.
It was, and I use BBC iPlayer all the goddamn time. Because I don't watch terrestrial TV, so the way that I consume any BBC content is through iPlayer. You know, it's my entire BBC circle is that app now. So
it's insane how much has changed in the last 20 years. Insane. So they did 2 more web shows in the same style: Real Time with Colin Baker and Shadow with Paul McGann. These 2 web shows were such huge hits, with Shadow getting 30,000 views per episode. And this was like roughly 2002. 30,000 people wanted to watch Paul McGann in Shadow, which is a pretty big number for 2002, when everybody is basically using dial-up internet and having to sit through buffering and low quality images and sound. And 2002 internet is insane.
And it's kind of I just want my Paul McGann series. Like he doesn't ever get his chance. You know, there's clearly people eager for him. He's great in it, and it made all the sense in the world for when Russell T Davies was bringing back the show to not bring Paul McGann back, because you're doing a reboot, kind of a reset, whatever. You want a fresh start. But it's just forever tragic if we never get that series, that he never actually got to do a whole series by himself. You know,
because when we saw him in person, he still looks young. He still is energetic. He can still do it.
When he showed up in Power of the Doctor, that's when we last saw him. Like, he looks great. He looks fantastic, and can do. He can, especially if it's only 1 or 2 series of his Doc version, because it could be like right at the end of his life before he goes off to regenerate. Like, you can get away with it easy peasy for sure.
So it made sense for the BBC to now try something more ambitious with actual moving drawings on Flash, which was a great choice at the time, because on that the animation could play straight on a computer without having to wait probably about 5 hours for a 15-minute cartoon to download. Because even when I had the internet first in 2006, it would take so long just to download something. Like, it was insane.
I live in the countryside, so that's still my experience. That's still my download speeds at times is about 60 kilobytes sometimes. So it's some things don't change.
The animation in this actually won some tech awards because of how fluid, I guess, it is, and also how it actually just fucking worked, Like, obviously, I would imagine there's still a lot of buffering, there's low quality images, but it apparently really worked, which is cool. This is the early days of Flash animation on computers. Like, other TV shows have had, rest in peace. Other TV shows like The Critic, which is the closest thing to a Simpsons spin-off show, and bloody Looney Tunes had Flash animated shorts, and they didn't look nearly as good as this Doctor Who cartoon. Like, those cartoons look fucking dreadful. Like Looney Tunes, the whole point of Looney Tunes is the time and the fast-paced energy. And with these Flash animated shorts, it's like, just watching characters slide around the screen very slowly, awkwardly.
I never really watched that many Flash animations. I mean, like, because I wasn't really on Newsgrounds or anything like that when I was a kid. So, like, most of my experience with Flash as a software was Flash games. I would go on websites like Armor Games or Silver Games or things like that and spend hours, because we didn't have a very good computer when I was growing up. So that was the most games I could get to play on it were Flash games, and just hours spent playing mindless trash on the Flash software that, and, bricking your computer every now and then. But it was like, What an era, you know? What an era. An era is gone now. It's gone.
The internet just does not feel the same these days. I just want to play some Flash games and watch some cartoons, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So plans for the Shalka started in 2002 when the people at BBCI, which was their website company name at the time, the people at BBCI realised that the BBC were doing absolutely nothing to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Doctor Who, because they just did not give a shit about the show in 2002, which is quite tragic, you know? So it took them a long time to raise the funds to animate this program. They initially wanted to make 12 episodes with 3 4-part stories. So there would have been 3 stories across this entire series. Instead, they just had to stick with 1 6-parter because they just did not raise enough money, and it just really just did not work out for them in the way they hoped. So we could have had more of Richard E. Grant as the Doctor, but instead we're just stuck with these 6 episodes.
Yeah, which I don't know if the story needs to be 6 episodes. I feel like maybe you could have done 6 episodes and done 2 3-part stories maybe, but you know, maybe then you just have to hire another writer to get another script done. So who's got the money?
Nobody.
Yeah, exactly. Not them.
So they basically only started the production on this in early 2003, and they did voiceovers in like the summer of 2003. So we did the animation between the summer and November. That's like 4 or 5 months. That's insane. You know, low budget animation is hard enough, and you have to do it in a tight deadline like this as well. That's
that
tough
is crazy.
work.
Yeah. That's almost. Hang on, I need to do a quick Google. Because I need to look something up. I was gonna say that's almost as good as like South Park, but it's nowhere near as good as South Park. South Park animate within a week. South Park do episodes within 6 days, but you know that's them with loads of money, with a much bigger budget, and and honestly, less detailed animation. You know, because they just have little Flash characters that just hop across the screen, easy peasy.
Basically, yeah.
You know?
Nowadays there is more advanced animation, but still not.
But there's also more advanced computers. You know, they have more advanced and probably more money as well. South Park's massive. They got that Paramount Plus money now, baby.
Yeah, they got £1 billion to make more South Park episodes, which is fucking insane.
That's so much money.
I think it's like 950 million, which is insane to think about.
That's still insane. That's insane. And Paramount's like, why don't we have any money?
So we were just talking about Paul McGann, and they actually decided not to have Paul McGann in the lead of this show because he had been playing the role for 7 years. You know, he was with Big Finish around this time, and they just had a mentality of, you know, this is a new medium, therefore it needs to be a new start for Doctor Who. Like, one of the biggest mistakes about the Doctor Who TV movie is it started off with Sylvester McCoy. And then halfway through that TV movie, he regenerates into Paul McGann. And Paul McGann never really gets to play the Doctor in that TV movie. He spends most of his time just confused about who the fuck he is.
See, we have a very long podcast episode, very old at this point now, episode. You know, it's when you used to put your microphone out your penis. We have very long episode covering the Doctor Who movie, and it's a film that we both quite like. But yeah, having Sylvester McCoy, I like the continuation of having Sylvester McCoy come in and regenerate, because it really lets you believe Paul McGann is the next version of the Doctor. He is this character, and you know, obviously the idea was to build a series off it, or you know, and so then you would have more adventures with Paul McGann after this. And, but obviously that never happened. If Sylvester McCoy regenerated earlier or off screen or in a flashback, perhaps, you know, you open up with a confused Paul McGann and he remembers his regeneration maybe throughout the film. There's lots of ways you could do it. But yeah, that's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about Richard E. Grant showing up, which throughout, when I was watching throughout, I was like, how does this fit in Doctor Who? Because
it definitely doesn't.
It definitely doesn't. You got kind of, unless he was the Doctor for a very brief period of time, because you get Paul McGann, who 100% regenerates into the War Doctor. We have seen this. We watched that entire special. We've seen that happen. And the War Doctor, we never explicitly see, despite what people will say, we never explicitly see him regenerate into Christopher Eccleston. He does have the line, let the ears be less conspicuous this time, hinting at the idea that perhaps he's going to be Christopher Eccleston, but we never see Eccleston's face. So he regenerates into Richard E. Grant, and he's like, my ears are very not conspicuous. Let's frame them with my hair. And then he regenerates again after that into Eccleston, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the weird can of worms, but Russell T. Davies opened when he had Richard E. Grant show up in Rogue. Just don't think about it. This is a different canon. This is a different universe.
3 Ninth Doctors.
3 Ninth Doctors, yeah, because Rowan Atkinson was also one of them.
Oh my god, 4, because War Doctor I was counting as a 9th Doctor.
Okay,
because technically speaking, in the lineage,
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
But don't think about it. But they also, the production of this also didn't want to use Paul McGann because it would be kind of stepping on Big Finish's toes. Because, this is an official continuation of the story. They got the license to do an official continuation in 2003 to do this. And so having Paul McGann in would be like making Big Finish, but essentially change their storyline ideas and just have to basically stick to the continuity of his cartoon. And it was like, no, we're not making them go through that trouble. We're just writing a new Doctor, a new Ninth Doctor, and we're hiring Richard E. Grant because that will attract viewers. People will hear Richard E. Grant is in this new animated show. I want to watch that. Let's, if it's Paul McGann, it'd be like, oh, but he was really bad in that TV movie I vaguely remember from 7 years ago.
No, he was great. Richard E. Grant as well as the Doctor, I think he's very good. His performance is very solid. I really enjoyed it. His personality is very strange. He goes from very serious to utterly wacky at a moment's notice. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, he is having an absolute blast in this cartoon. He is just excellent throughout the entire thing. Like, Russell T. Davies famously said that he basically took the check. He took money and just ran away with it. He just put in zero effort into this cartoon. And I completely disagree with Russell T. Davies. He is putting so much energy into his performance in this cartoon. Like, apparently, when he initially had the table read, he was very kind of stiff to begin with, but as time went on, he was more familiar with the role, he was enjoying himself more, and by the end of episode 1, when he has to read the line, I am the Doctor, he stood up from his chair and pointed to his chest and said, I am the Doctor. He had that kind of energy about it, and in the recording booth, he apparently gave very different takes each time. Just because he wanted to try different ideas, and sometimes one take would be better than the other. He was very committed to this role. He was treating it very nicely, so he definitely does not give a lazy performance. I don't understand that sentiment that Russell D. Davies said maybe 20 years ago now.
But also, 20 years ago, Russell T. Davies, he was probably just a jaded fan, He was just like, this isn't Doctor Who, this isn't what I know Doctor Who to be, this isn't what I want it to be, And so it's the same with the Doctor Who movie.
Yeah.
That's not what people wanted Doctor Who to be, so they start blaming things in the movie that maybe, those things actually work when you remove yourself from the emotion of, this isn't the Doctor Who I know, And it's something everybody's guilty of because you can only live in the moment, can't you? There's no way you can step outside.
I
also
also
in 20 years actually this will be quite good, I think.
I also imagine that he has softened a lot for just the sole reason that he included Richard E. Grant in Rogue. I imagine that's more of an apology to Richard E. Grant, because that wasn't nice what he said about Richard E. Grant.
No,
that's not
very,
the
very
best
mean.
thing that he said.
Yeah, very mean. Very mean.
But yeah, this Richard E. Grant version of the Ninth Doctor was so officially the Ninth Doctor at the time that even BBC Books were debating whether or not they should stop their Eighth Doctor range and start publishing new stories with the Ninth Doctor, Richard E. Grant. So, and then, something happened a few months later that completely ruined their plans. We'll get to that. They didn't want to do a regeneration scene. They didn't want new audiences to tune into a show where the character is recovering from a regeneration. Again, that's why the TV movie didn't work. And the crew were very optimistic that they would be able to do more Ninth Doctor stories, already laying out a series guide for future episodes. Until suddenly Paul Cornell gets a phone call from Mr. Russell T. Davis, who says...
Never heard of him.
So Russell T. Davis tells him, terrible news. Doctor Who is coming back. and Paul Cornell is like, yeah, so this is Russell T. Davis telling him terrible news, because that would mean all his plans for Shalka, the Shalka version of the Doctor, will now be put to rest because Doctor Who is coming back to television. So, that's nice of him to... So this is before the public announcement of the show coming back, which is it's giving him a heads up is a nice thing to do. It's a nice thing to be like, hey, I'm sorry, I put you out of a job, essentially.
For sure, I would have perhaps even been like, can I take a look at your scripts? Can I see your ideas? And maybe we'll try to incorporate these into see if I can get if your vision's going to align with what I want with the show, or maybe I'll offer you a job. You can write an episode.
At the end of this phone call, Russell T. Davis ends the phone call promising he'll be calling again. A few months later, Paul gets another call from Russell T. Davis, who asks him, "Hey, Paul, what are you up to?" And Paul replies with, "I'm just putting chips in the oven." And then they both have a conversation about oven chips for like a minute or so. And then Russell T. Davis is like, "Hey, would you want to write for Doctor Who?" And Paul Cornell was like, let me think about it. And then Russell T. Davis is like, no, I mean, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. And Paul Cornell is like, of course I want to do it. What the fuck are you talking about? And of course, Paul Cornell would eventually go on to write the episodes Father's Day for Series 1. He would also go on to write Human Nature, which is an adaptation of his book. So we've covered Human Nature. If you want to hear more about Paul Cornell,
we've also covered
podcast.
Father's Day as well.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, Father's Day, which is a really hard episode.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. But yeah, absolute. Very good at writing. Very good at writing.
He
that
is,
guy,
and it's a shame he hasn't returned to the show since. It's been almost 20 years.
Well,
I'd
to be
love
fair,
see him come back.
for the last 15 years, we've only had 3 people writing the show.
So the animation studio, just to briefly go over this, this was animated by Cosgrove Hall, and this was the studio responsible. They were approached to animate this as they had done a series called Ghosts of Albion, which was the BBC's first animated series, which was very successful. And this was created by Amber Benson and Christopher Golden. Amber Benson played Tara on Buffy, by the way. So this is the lady from Buffy. You'll recognize her. She was Willow's girlfriend.
Yeah, I just googled her. I recognize her.
And also, both of these creators would later go on to do the revival that Audible did last year, Slayers, which was actually really solid. I really enjoyed Slayers, but Disney got greedy, and we're like, we're not continuing this. So it's not.
We're not continuing this, and we're not doing anything else with Buffy. We're just gonna sit on it. We're just gonna sit on our IP and not make anything new with it.
It's fucking
Anyway,
bizarre
here's your
because
15th sequel to something else.
Buffy is fucking perfect to bring back. Bring back a new Slayer, because the whole point of Buffy is there's a new Slayer born every generation.
Yeah.
Just do a new one for a new generation. It's easy.
You could do a new Buffy. You could make it all woke and, and really upset people online that will never watch the show anyway. And then you could cancel it after like a season or two. And nobody is really going to notice because it'll be a Disney Plus original. So no one's going to really care. No one's going to really care.
To get back to Cosgrove Hall, we would also do the animation for the 2 missing episodes of The Invasion in 2006. And other projects we did is Danger Mouse, Count Duckula, the BFG, the 90s movie, Noddy, Bill and Ben, the show we grew up on, Andy Pandy, Little Robots,
Andy Pandy, Little
Postman
Robots,
Pat, Fifi and the Flower Tots.
Oh my god, it's my childhood all at once.
Like a legendary animation studio, which shut down. They sadly shut down in 2008 because, ITV, I guess, were the co-owners of the company, and they just shut the company down.
2008 is also the market crisis, isn't it?
Yeah, so not a great year.
Yeah, that probably played a factor into shutting it down.
And then, this is also the time when CITV decides they don't want to do children's TV shows anymore, so they just shut down their children's department entirely and just rely on American imports, essentially, which is a shame.
Yeah. But no, that was a hot run. That was a hot run of kids shows. That was legitimately from Flower Pot Men onwards. That's basically like almost every show I watched as a kid.
Yes.
was made by this one studio apparently, which is crazy.
So to get back to Paul Cornell, so when he was approached to do this, he was first approached to write Shalka. He was very eager to say yes, partly because he was a huge Doctor Who fan, and also because he was recently fired from 2 TV shows at the same time, which sounds rough.
That's a real hit to the ego. That's a real. Am I actually good at writing? Double fucking whammy there. Jesus.
So, as a lifelong fan of the show, he had to pitch it to a producer who wasn't a fan of the show. And the producer had to be convinced to stop calling the character a superhero, because Doctor Who isn't a superhero, even though he is. I consider Doctor Who to be a superhero.
I don't think the original intention of the character was for that to be the case, but I definitely think as the series has moved on, he definitely is. He does so much impossible shit. All like it's and they did the whole Return of Doctor Mysterio, where there was a superhero. So,
but yeah, he's a superhero. I don't give a shit what anybody else says.
He's essentially a British superhero. It's like James Bond is basically a superhero as well. Like these are people that do impossible things and save the day. And you boil it down, it's like superhero formula, isn't it?
So he had to promise his decisions were made because it fits the DNA of the classic series. He purposely made the story start small scale to try and emulate the budget of classic series, and then he did things in the back half that you can only do in animation. And this is to be basically get in the audience who otherwise, if you start off with the crazy shit, they would start off with, if you're a big fan of Doctor Who, you would go into episode 1 and be like, this isn't Doctor Who, this is too wacky, this is too cartoony. Whereas episode 1 is fairly grounded, it's fairly what you would see in the classic series, I'd imagine, it feels like a low budget kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's interesting, the build up to it, because episode 4 I honestly kind of thought was the end. Right. And then episode 5 started and I was like, okay, cool, I guess we're gonna keep going. And that's when I messaged you when I was like, how many episodes is in this thing? Because when episode 5 came on, I was like, why is the story still going on? Because especially episodes 5 and 6, I find they kind of become something completely different from what they set up. But I do feel that classic Who vibe of, it starts off, you're in a little British town, you're in a pub, there's nothing kind of weird going on, and then by the last episode, you're in the big alien base, and there's these big slug weird monsters everywhere, It
definitely goes overboard towards the end, but we'll get there next week. So 2 weeks before he actually gets this, 2 weeks after he gets this job, he has to go on honeymoon to New Zealand. He just recently got married, so now he's on a 5-week honeymoon trying to do the first draft, and he has to spend most of his days inside a camper van to try and get this first draft out. What a way to spend your honeymoon.
Honeymoons in a camper van.
And, the first thing he noticed when he arrived in New Zealand was how clean the air was. And so that inspired a lot of the environmental themes of this story. It even opens in New Zealand, even though it doesn't actually say New Zealand anywhere. It opens up in New Zealand. That's why it opens up in New Zealand.
Interesting.
So he promised to deliver the first draft through email when he was on a holiday. But tragedy happened when he checked into a cyber cafe and found that the BBC's firewall had rejected the document. And then he found his floppy disk was now damaged. So he had to physically try and hook up his laptop to their system. And that just did not work. So he eventually got to borrow a printer with the goal of faxing it to the BBC. Which is something I've never done. I've never
faxed. No. I only know faxing from movies and TV shows.
But when he arrived at the faxing place, he found out that it would cost £500 to get it faxed to the BBC. Which
I suppose it's going across the world, But.
So he's like, I have this printed off and might as well just mail it to the BBC. So he puts it through a mailbox. It's in the mailbox, and he asks the person at the mail place, at the post office, he asks,
the mail
hey,
place.
How long is this going to take to get to England? Oh, about 6 to 7 weeks. The deadline is a week away. Which, oof.
Yeah. A phone call could probably clear a lot of this up.
Yeah, so here we go. He eventually phoned his friend in England to break into his house. And I mean actually break into his house. Broken window and everything. To log onto his home computer to email the first draft to the BBC.
Jesus Christ.
This probably would never happen these days. But,
it's a lot easier to get information to people
Absolutely.
A lot faster. If it's like the firewall isn't functioning on the BBC for me to send my script, I just send the BBC an email, be like, hey, I can't, the firewall's not letting me update it. Can you fix this for me? And they'll be like, sure, we'll get the IT guy on it. Or just to attach the file to this email and send it that way. Don't upload it to whatever random website you're using in 2003,
What a time to be alive.
Yeah.
So one of his notes he got was that he was writing it as if it was an audio script. Apparently there was a point where BBC 7, which is a radio station, was apparently going to also broadcast this animation, but obviously just through audio itself, but apparently that eventually got dropped. So he was still writing it as if it was an audio script. And he was told, hey, we can see what's happening. We don't need characters to stand around telling us what they see. Chris Chibnall did not get this note.
Didn't catch that memo.
Apparently.
Yeah, that was actually something that I thought about when I was watching these episodes. Is like the animation is jank for sure. The audio production and the sound production. Like, if you close your eyes, it's like a Big Finish drama. Like, it's real good. The audio production is very high quality, for sure, yeah.
So the cast of the short episodes, I guess. a lot of big names because web animation wasn't well regarded around this time, so they really needed to grab people's attention. And of course, we have Richard E. Grant as the official Ninth Doctor. We could have actually had Robbie Williams, the pop singer, as the Ninth Doctor in this short, which would have been very interesting. He was apparently a fan of the show and reached out to the production, but it turns out he would have been busy around the time of recording, so it was given to Richard E. Grant instead. But Robbie Williams, interesting choice.
I don't know how good of an actor he is. I don't know if I've ever really seen him in anything.
Have you never seen The Magic Roundabout with Tom Baker, Robbie Williams, and Ian McKellen?
I had that on video. That was a classic childhood movie.
Robbie Williams voices the dog in that movie, Dougal.
See, I loved that film as a kid, but I haven't seen it since I was maybe younger than 5. So you don't really have much critical thinking skills. You don't really know what acting is. It could be the worst performance of all time. I have no real memory of it.
I probably last watched this about a decade ago. It's okay. I really loved it as a kid. It's fine now. It's not the worst thing. If you want to see the worst thing, watch the American redubbed version, where it's all pop culture references. There's references to Lord of the Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean. Jon Stewart is in it, and at one point he says, "Oh, is this a Star Trek convention? Hi, you nerds." Like, it's awful. It's so awful.
Cool.
So Richard E. Grant hadn't watched Doctor Who before. He wasn't even into science fiction. The only book he read was 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's the only science fiction he was apparently into at the time, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, I get. Some people just don't like sci-fi. It's a popular genre, but it's still relatively niche. Some people just don't. They just like, I'll watch dramas, or I'll watch documentaries, or romance, or horror. People find their thing they like and they kind of stick with it. Like I mostly consume sci-fi stuff. Sci-fi horror is really where I float about most days. I don't tend to go into many other things, especially if I'm reading or watching TV shows or anything like that. I try to stretch out and be a man of culture. Like I like every genre, but I have my favorite genres that I've seen more sci-fi and horror films than I have rom-coms. I've hardly seen fucking any rom-coms. It's a real blind spot for me.
So other things he's done is, of course, he played the 10th Doctor in The Curse of Fatal Death. He was in With Neil and I with Paul McGann, and when I read some interviews for the Scream of the Shalka, and when he was interviewed, he was asked about Paul McGann, and Richard E. Grant was like, he's probably the sexiest man alive. Like, he's just lovely. He's the sexiest man alive. He's a ladies' man, which sounds like the Paul McGann I met.
Yeah.
And of course, Richard E. Grant would later go on to play the Great Intelligence in Doctor Who in The Snowmen and The Name of the Doctor, which is an episodes we need to cover someday because it's been a long time since I've seen those episodes. I don't remember him being in it too much, but it's been a while. Other famous roles include he was in Logan, Rise of Skywalker, Can You Ever Forgive Me? He was one of the Lokis in Loki. And he was also in Game of Thrones for a bit. So he's in a lot of stuff.
Who the fuck was he in Game of Thrones?
Some guy. He was in it for like 9 episodes.
God, I watched every episode of Game of Thrones. I don't remember him in it.
Oh, he was obviously, of course, in Saltburn as well. So loads of stuff.
Mediocre. He played Eisen Barrow. I fucking don't remember him. Why is he's got such a bad wig on? He's got like the worst wigs I've ever seen in my life. Yeah,
you can see it part off of his head.
I don't remember his character at all.
But yeah, he was in this for like 9 episodes apparently.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't remember that. What a terrible, terrible wig. Jesus.
Also in the cast, we have Derek Jacobi as the Master, which, did you know the Master was in this?
Yeah, because he's on the cover. of the DVD. So it was not a surprise. It was it was a surprise that he was a robot. That was a surprise. He's not really. He's not the master. He's just I said sex bot earlier because it's kind of the only thing I can think that he could possibly be. Why the Doctor would make a robot version of the master, I don't know.
We'll talk about what's going on with the Doctor here, because he kind of went through his own time war kind of situation, this Ninth Doctor, so we'll get into it. But of course, Derek Jacobi, he had just played an alternative Doctor in Big Finish's Unbound series at this time, so he's like the only man to play the Doctor and the Master. Two incarnations of the Master, two very different incarnations of the Master. This one's more camp, whereas the War Master is way more sinister and evil. Like, this is the campest Master I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Sex bot, you know?
And his other roles include Gladiator 1, and he's returning for Gladiator 2 later this year. So I guess that's one good movie coming out this year. He's in The King's Speech. He's in Good Omens. He was the narrator for In the Night Garden, which is insane.
Oh, interesting. I never guessed.
And he's also in Vicious with Ian McKellen, where him and Ian McKellen are like a gay couple, and they just banter all the time. I guess the chemistry between them two must be the same as the chemistry between Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy when we saw them live.
Yeah. They were great. They were great together for sure.
So also in this short, we have Sophie Okonedo as Alison Cheney. She was also in Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls. She was in Doctor Who, the show itself, as Liz 10 in The Beast Below.
Oh, right, the Queen, yes.
Yeah. The way I said Liz 10 made it sound like Ben 10 there for a second. She's also recently been in the show Slow Horses with Gary Oldman and Jonathan Pryce. Jonathan Pryce, of course, played the Master in Curse of Fatal Death. So, so that's interesting. Everyone keeps talking about Slow Horses. It's like the biggest UK show at the moment. It's wild.
I've never heard of it in my life.
It's got 4 seasons on Apple Plus. It started like 2 years ago.
It has a cool poster. And it's got a guy, Jack Loudon. He looks like discount Simon Pegg. So there you go. Hugo Weaving's in it as well. Never heard of it.
Yeah, it's apparently a big show for Apple TV.
There's some really good shows on Apple TV apparently, but
I really need to get to that service.
There's just too many services. There's too many services.
I don't have time.
Yeah.
Also in this cast, we have Craig Kelly as Joe, which is Alison's boyfriend, who was actually neighbours with Sophie at the time. So like they would constantly see each other just across the street and stuff. So he actually studied acting alongside John Sims, which is wild because that's another master. We keep talking about masters in this episode.
Everyone's in Doctor Who, man. If you're British, if you're an actor that's been in Britain, you've just stumbled your way onto the Doctor Who set at some point, you know.
And speaking of Doctor Who, his biggest role before this web series was Vince Tyler from Queer as Folk, which was a show created by Russell T. Davies. And in that show, he played a guy who was absolutely obsessed with Doctor Who. Like, for that show, Russell T. Davies gave him loads of tapes of Doctor Who episodes. He did his research watching Doctor Who, so that's a show we should cover someday. I know there's a lot of Doctor Who themed episodes. Like, there's one episode where K9 is in it.
Interesting.
But yeah, we should cover. Also in this cast, we have Jim Norton, who plays Major Thomas Kennett. He has a very minor role in this, but one thing he is in is he is Einstein in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Oh,
so that's cool.
Okay.
He's also in Babylon 5. So there you go.
I tried watching an episode of Babylon 5
Same here.
Several months ago. I used to catch episodes every now and then on TV as a kid and I thought it was pretty neat. I tried watching it, and turns out Babylon 5 is one of the first shows on TV to do full CGI all the time.
Oh, wow.
You can tell. You can it's bad CGI in that show. Goddamn.
I tried to watch this show like a decade ago, and I was fucking bored out of my mind because I was like 16. I just did not give a shit about all the political talk. It's very dry, Babylon 5.
Yeah. I remember digging it, but I tried watching the first episode, and probably just because it's the pilot episode for a sci-fi show, like usually those suck, but I could not get my way. I could not work through it. Could not work through it at all.
But hey, that's us in our history corner here. Just about an hour in.
Yeah.
Are you ready to hear the screams of the Shalka?
It's my least favorite part of this story. It's all the screaming, just endless screaming, never ending, and it's such an annoying sound as well. They managed to make from it. But,
I mean,
yeah,
it's not as bad as listening to Bonnie Langford scream in the classic.
It's
series.
up there. It's up there. But I guess we might as well look at episodes 1 through 3 of Scream of the Shalka to wrap this episode up. And next week we will be covering episodes 4 to 6. I expect next week's podcast to be significantly shorter than this one.
Well, I have more pre-production stuff next week, but
okay,
I should be
we'll
slightly
see.
shorter.
Yeah,
we'll see.
But yeah, let's dive into Scream of the Shalka.
3 weeks ago, like you said, some kind of sound, deep underground, a vibration. It was there when you listened to the pipes. It was there when you slept, right at the edge of hearing.
Alison, don't.
Joe, I have to do this. Somebody has to.
I've heard this noise myself. So it seems you're living above an angry landlord with a long broom handle who wants you all to stay very, very quiet.
So, episode 1 of the Scream of the Shalka begins with some intro credits, and they're pretty good. I like them. I like the intro.
Yeah.
I like the funky background. The theme song I think is fine. It's clearly low budget because they don't really do much other than the TARDIS shows up and then it stands there for a bit. Yeah. But it's good. I like the intro credits. They're funky.
Yeah, the theme song is very 2003. It feels like club music from that era. It feels like you could just imagine people at the club dancing to that.
But the episode then opens up to Earth, where we go in to see a man in a suit with his best friend, man in a floral shirt. I don't understand who these guys are or what they're doing, why they are dressed so differently from each other.
There are 2 meteorologists just following around a meteor. So that's their background.
And there's only 2 of them, right? They've somehow managed to fight. Like, this is a meteor that's impacting Earth. This is a meteor that's going to crash land on Earth. Not only is it like it's not just going to burn up in the atmosphere. There's going to be a collision. There's going to be impact. There's going to be a crater. There's going to be a whole ass meteorite. That's a fucking rare ass occurrence. That like there's going to be more than just 2 meteorologists here to witness it, and they're so close to it. It's like right above their fucking head as it comes down.
This is budget. Yeah. I presume they can only animate like 2 people at once.
But it also, like, when the meteor comes down, they're like, holy shit, look at this is so cool, let's go touch it. Let's just go touch the fuck out of this thing. This hugely radioactive rock from space. Let's just go give it a lick.
But before they do that stupid act, we're like, we're trying to radio people, and we're like, oh, what's wrong with the radio? And the guy in the suit is like, oh, there's a new radio station nearby, Volcano FM. And the hippie dude is like, rock by day, lava by night. Terrible line. Fucking terrible.
It's not a very good opening.
This is the point of the episode where I was like, oh, fuck. We're in a bad place.
Like 30 seconds
fortunately, yes. But it does get a lot better.
It gets better. I wouldn't say it gets a lot better. They go down and touch the meteorite, but they see something shift inside, and they're like, holy shit, there's something there that's on that rock. Let's try and touch it some more. But it jumps into some of the stones. It's like, oh my god, I think it turned those stones into lava or something. So like, this is a creature that operates at like hot temperatures. Like, it can melt through rock and things like that. And then a bunch of gas starts coming out of the meteorite that the guys start choking on. And we see a scream from, presumably, a Shalka, which was the creature on the meteorite. And we cut to darkness as the TARDIS appears. And it's a terrible opening. This did not hook me in.
It is, yes.
At all.
What you'll notice also is it cuts to darkness about every 2 minutes to just allow, the next bit of the animation to start loading up, So this is the best way, 2-minute installments to just help the 2003 internet connection and computer to just load the next part, because otherwise they'd be in hell trying to load this 15-minute animation here.
Yeah. And the Doctor comes out of the TARDIS, and he's very angry. He's not very happy to be here. He's like, fuck this. I don't want to help. I don't want to find out what the problem is here. Go away, TARDIS. Why did you bring me here? I didn't want this to happen. I don't want to be here right now. But why did he come out of the TARDIS? I just fucking stay inside.
Well, he's not talking to the TARDIS here. What he is meant to be talking to, he is yelling to the Time Lords, because apparently they're still navigating the TARDIS, bringing them to different places to save the day and shit like that, apparently was the plan. I'm not entirely sure what the full plan was, but that's apparently what's going on here.
So this is before the Time War? Which adds even more complication to it.
Okay. Let's pause here and go back to what happened to the Shalka Doctor. The Shalka Doctor constantly mentions things about his past, which never gets explained in this series, because they were hoping to do more, and it obviously would have been eventually explained in the later stories. So, I'm going to explain what happened to the Shalka Doctor between the TV movie and presumably this short. So, the Doctor lost the woman he loved on his home planet of Gallifrey, to which he'd retired. But then monsters invaded Gallifrey. The woman was the daughter of a Time Lord president. All the Time Lords were killed, but retreated to the Matrix, where Time Lord memories are kept after death. Except the Doctor's love, who is truly dead. So his wife dies, the Time Lords are all dead, but except for locked into the Matrix, which I guess we're still contacting the Doctor and, stuff like that. We're still controlling what the Doctor is doing here. The Master helped the Doctor send the aliens packing and destroyed his final physical body in the process. So the Master is dead, and that's why he's a robot here. The Doctor used Matrix technology to store him in a robot made out of the TARDIS materials. The Time Lords used their power, even from inside the Matrix, to send the Doctor off to sort the most dangerous problems of the universe. So we're kind of dealing with a time war thing going on here, except with different twists. It's interesting.
Sure.
So what do you think about this?
It seems common. I'm not a huge fan of the Doctor marrying someone and then being killed and whatever,
Yeah.
And the Time Lords just can't catch a fucking break. I
know. Even in this 2003 animated
they're all
series,
dead again.
they're just dead.
Yeah, they're all dead again. But yeah, okay. I guess that makes more sense.
And this is why
behavior.
the Doctor's so cranky at the start. It's kind of like Christopher Eccleston, except Christopher Eccleston still felt love and he still wanted to save the day and shit like that. Whereas this Doctor is like, nah, I fucking just want to go home. I just want to stay in the TARDIS and just do nothing.
Eccleston's Doctor has the added benefit, I guess, of it got a full series.
Yes.
Whereas, so you can flesh all that out. Like, if you were to just watch Rose, you would kind of be like, this guy is so grumpy. What a grumpy guy, But yeah, okay. I guess I'll have that knowledge moving forwards. We go into
to go to another thing here. Allison, the character of Allison in this series. The original concept of her was that she worked at the cinema, and her supporting cast was her mum, dad, and little brother. She had no boyfriend in the original concept. But she is meant to be the character that wakes the Doctor up from his depression, much like Rose. And then it also says, but in many ways she's his intellectual equal. He can't see the point in studying history, it's just stuff to hop past. But to her, it's a weave of cause and effect, because she's a history student, apparently. So she looks at history as, this causes that. Look at the causality of things, whereas the Doctor just hops around and doesn't think about that stuff. But soon, the Doctor and Alison are going to be best friends. But one always suspects that even given the slightest hint, but she wants it to be more than that. So we were hinting at a romance here, much like the Doctor and Rose.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. There's a lot of parallel thinking here.
For sure. Or, maybe Russell T Davies got a few notes on that phone call about chips. But yeah, okay, that's interesting. But inside the pub, we get a little bit of exposition of nobody's in the town, nobody's about. People aren't making noise. They're not making any money because nobody's about. And our character here, whose name you just said and has left my head completely, who's Bar Lady that goes on the adventure with the Doctor? What's her character's
Alison.
name?
I had to scroll up and find out.
Yeah.
Alison Cheney. And when the Doctor is introduced to her, he's like, oh, are you related to the Lon Chaney? He's a very hairy man. This is Lon Chaney played the Wolfman, so it's a joke.
Oh.
But
Actually,
nobody fucking gets, because nobody knows who Lon Chaney is.
Yeah, I didn't get the joke, but as a fellow very hairy man, I can relate to it a lot. I have exceptional amounts of hair. I have extremely hairy face. Look at my face, man.
No, I want to see your chest.
I got crazy hairy arms. It goes all the way up to my hands. I got fucking, I got a goddamn. I got a hairy chest. I got fucking. It's hard to tell because it's all ginger, But I got hairy boy. Hair. You should see my butthole, right? And
okay, yes, please. Wait, what?
The Doctor comes in and he's like, "Hey, I would like a drink, please." And he orders a fancy wine or whatever, and he gets something. It's always interesting seeing the different incarnations of the Doctor that like alcohol and don't like alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if Eccleston's Doctor drank. I think he did. He hinted at or mentioned drinking in some episodes.
in the first episode, he opens up a thing of champagne and the cork goes inside Mickey's head.
David Tennant's Doctor famously got very drunk.
Yeah.
I
think John Pertwee drank some wine.
Yeah. There's that famous gif of him drinking wine.
Yeah.
Matt Smith's Doctor famously didn't like alcohol. But still did get drunk at times. He was very inconsistent. Same how he was horny and not horny.
Yes.
It's kind of like what did Moffat feel like when he was doing it. Anyway, this is a relatively interesting scene. There's a fun line from the Doctor here where one of the bartenders like, "Hey, I've never seen you before," and he's like, "Yeah. It's only a Saturday night in the center of town. I guess you don't get that many strangers about," which I thought was a real good line. That's subtly hints at the weird things the Doctor's noticing, how things are kind of off in town.
Here the Doctor noticed that everybody is scared of something, but Alison is less scared than the other people. So this is showing that Alison is more than a classic Doctor Who companion who always gets scared of shit. She's more brave than usual.
Yeah. And outside the pub, we see a Shalka approaching. Then I kind of get confused as to where everybody is.
Yeah.
Because the TARDIS gets sucked into the ground, which Alison witnesses. But I'm like, where was the Doctor? Why didn't he see this scene? Why is Alison suddenly outside staring at the TARDIS? Why did she want to do this?
Oh, yeah. The Doctor leaves.
Yeah.
And I think Alison watches him leave, and then the Shalka comes out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to watch this back, but because the animation just lingers on shots for too long.
Yeah. It gets a bit weird. But the important thing is the TARDIS is gone, so there's no escape. Yeah. The Doctor can't just get in the TARDIS and go away. Very classic Doctor Who setup. arrive in a place and get rid of the machine that can fix all the problems straight away, so that the Doctor, has to solve the problem without his tools. That's the goal.
I don't entirely get why they don't just tell the Doctor, hey, if you make a loud noise, this monster will appear. Blah 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 blah. Because Richard E. Grant is shouting. Richard E. Grant is shouting in several scenes. You want to warn the guy in case he summons the monsters, and then the monster would attack you as well. Because you're in the same area as the Doctor, so you would want to warn him rather than keep it a secret.
It's also, I think, one of the things that makes me really lose my attention in this episode and for the next few episodes is the fact that the animation is not great. So it's not that great to look at, and there's not a lot going on, and then everybody is whispering their lines. They're all talking really softly as they're going on, and there's not a lot of music happening, and I'm like, oh my god, my attention is not being gripped right now,
And then the Shalka screams, and then suddenly your joke is over.
And then it's like, oh my god, fucking shut up. But the Doctor then meets an elderly woman who is homeless, as well as several stone men who have been lavified into stone. That is the technical term. This is a fine scene. Like, it's completely fine. It delivers some necessary exposition, I guess. And like, hey, there's some weird things going on. People are dying, and you got to kind of be quiet and things like that. And there's this light bit of comedy with the Doctor trying to give her some change from his pocket, and he's like, "Oh, this won't do you any good. Who wants money that talks back?" Stuff like that. It feels Doctor Who-y, But then she starts screaming, and when she's screaming her head off, I was like, damn. These guys were really ahead of the curve on what type of content is going to be popular on the internet. Screaming is where it's at. You gotta scream, you've gotta yell, you've gotta be the most exaggerated, noisy thing possible for anyone to give you any sense of attention. These guys knew what was going on.
But apparently the old lady is only in this episode because James Goss, one of the producers, was like, hey, I like characters who are just old ladies. Could you include one?
All right. And
it's like, the scene is kind of sweet, the way the Doctor just talks to her like a normal human being. He doesn't judge the old lady for being homeless or being slightly senile, he just treats her like an actual person. And then there's a look from the old lady where she's like, oh, this guy I'm talking to is crazy, even though she's the one who has 28 cats. And so that's some nice comedy. And here is where the Doctor says, oh, one of your cats that ran away must have ran out of his 9 lives, much like me, which indicates that he is the 9th Doctor here, the official 9th Doctor. Except 2 months ago, we found out, well, the show was coming back, so this is redundant, which is a huge shame for his production,
Yeah, that is for sure. And if I had to cut out any scenes, it would be the scene would be on the cutting room floor for sure. Then suddenly we're playing a game of Facade. After this, as we go into Alison's apartment where she meets her boyfriend, who looks like almost the spitting image of the boyfriend from the game Facade. If you've never played that game or seen that game, I recommend checking out that YouTube channel, Psychedelic Gaming Hobos. They did a whole video on it. But he seems much more okay with the quiet and being quiet and staying everything quiet, which kind of frustrates Alison. We also find out that he's a doctor. Working in a surgery, and there's some, she likes doctors, this Alison. What can I say? She has a type.
So this boyfriend character was introduced because the original idea was that both these characters would be companions, because James Goss found the concept of the Doctor's companions being a broken up couple. He just thought it would be funny. I mean, eventually it was like, no, eventually, it's going to annoy people just to have companions who are constantly bickering in every episode. You can't relate to these characters. You can't love these characters who are just arguing all the fucking time. Eventually, Stephen Moffat would kind of write a divorced couple with Amy and Rory in the Asylum of the Daleks, and that was shit.
Yes.
So he was right.
Great. Yeah,
Paul was right.
Yeah, but to be fair, I don't think that's bad because of the bickering or anything. Like that entire episode is kind of about them falling back in love and, you know, loving each other and things like that. It's just as a really convoluted setup because it's like you don't believe that these two would ever break up, and their reasoning for breaking up is really dumb as well because it's like Amy can't have kids or something like that, and yeah, it's dumb. It's really dumb.
It really was dumb. And so in draft 1, Paul apparently wrote the boyfriend being boiled alive in lava. And apparently he would eventually be possessed. So it's kind of like a Mickey situation from episode 1, where there's a possessed Mickey running around for a bit. The second draft changed the concept to have the supporting cast be Allison's 3 family members, but eventually somebody pointed out to Paul that hiring 3 extra actors just does not work, you know, because they're minor characters. Like her little brother would have had like 2 lines. Hiring a little kid for just 2 lines is just not worth it. So just have one character for her to talk to, and then the boyfriend eventually came back. Which I don't mind this boyfriend character. He's a loser, much like Mickey. He's just the prototype for Mickey, really. Except the races are swapped over.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. But the doctor eventually shows up into the house and he's like, why is everybody acting so fucking weird? Why is nobody telling me anything? Why is everybody being so quiet all the time? Why is nobody here? Why did that lady outside die and nobody give a shit about it? And this is basically where they're like, you need to shut the fuck up because of these aliens that are about the place. And then, oh my god, the alien shows up and that's the end of the episode. That's the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Of the Scream of the Shalka. God damn.
It's not too bad. What I like about this final scene is we find out, you know, Joe is kind of fine with the way things are. He's kind of like complicit. You know, he's like, yeah, well, so what if there's monsters who just want to murder us if we shout too loud? I don't care. Let's just watch TV quietly. Whereas Allison wants to actually fight the monster. Well, not fight the monster, but she's like, I want to get away from the situation.
Why don't these people just move away? Why don't they just move out?
I don't know. There's no explanation given.
Just leave. Just leave the town. The town's gone. It's over.
We also find out from Joe that all of the doctor's patients, what little patients he had that day, all came in with throat issues, and Allison also has throat issues. She's a bit hoarse herself. She turns into BoJack Horseman. And also we find out that Kim, Allison's friend from work, she died. The ground just opened up below her, and then Kim started covering herself with lava, and Allison and her boyfriend just watched. They were just frozen because, like the men at the beginning of the episode, they could only just watch, which sounds fucking horrifying. To watch your friend just cover themselves with lava. Sounds horrifying.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a nice way to go. No, not how I want to go. Not how I want to go at all.
Worth a try, though, if you ever want to try it.
I mean, if the opportunity presents itself. But that is episode 1, Scream of the Shalka. I can't say I'm a fan. Can't say it really hooked me into wanting to see what episode 2 was like. Can't say it was a fast 15 minutes. It's really only like 3 scenes. Yeah. But somehow it's kind of dull. It's somehow kind of dull.
What I liked about this was, you know, there's a good mystery being set up here. What's going on in this town? And then the mystery kind of gets ruined because I don't understand why the characters are acting this way. Because I texted you as I was watching this first part, and I'm like, oh, there's some good atmosphere with the gothic setting here. It's really intriguing, just a mystery going on here. But then, you know, it eventually gets ruined because it just does not make sense to me. But
yeah,
we'll be talking about episode 2 now.
Something we haven't actually touched on yet, though, is the design of Richard E. Grant's Doctor.
Yes.
Who wears very Victorian garb, very Paul McGann-esque in his outfit. You know, he's got his classic big coat on, his very Victorian popped collar shirt and little scarf thing. Nice bit of green on the inside layer of the jacket. I like.
He has a green cape.
Yeah. Really weird hair. He has
Yes.
really weird hair. It's like a pushback, receding hairline that splits and cups his ears.
Yes.
Which it makes him look evil. He's a very evil. Like, if this was a design for the Master, I'd be like, oh yeah, no, I totally see that. I totally see this being the Master. You know.
Yeah, it looking kind of evil is what Paul Cornell kind of pointed out. He wanted a more kind of sinister looking Doctor because he is kind of prickly in this first part of the episode. But then Paul
He starts singing and shit in just 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes time, you know?
But then Richard E. Grant gave so much life to the performance, and he kind of gave so much comedy to the performance that Paul Cornell was like, oh, maybe if we could have continued, we would have changed the design to be more softer, I guess is the term, because it is definitely a hard vibe for this Doctor. I kind of like it. I kind of like the design, but
see, I think I have that the disassociation between the design and the performance kind of make the design feel weird for me, because like that hits on it. Richard E. Grant doesn't feel like he fits this drawing. You know, like he's giving a really energetic performance throughout, and this seems like a really stoic man. This character feels like he would be way more stoic than the performance Richard E. Grant is giving for him, which feel like his performance feels more like the Doctor. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the design. But
yeah,
I like his outfit. It's really just the hair and the angular face. But
yeah. Episode 2?
Yes, I suppose. Let us jump into episode 2 of The Scream of the Shalka. Wow.
Ah, you must be the aliens. I've heard so much about you. It's been a long time since anyone screamed at me, and then I think they were only waiting for Elvis to come on. But my poetry went down tremendously. Run! You killed them! I do not kill. They're obviously bioplasmic creatures. Obviously. Masses of goo. The bodies are just crusts, scabs. They'll knit themselves back together. Their eyes don't look much use, so they probably live underground, navigate by sound, and the hood's focus a sonic weapon to stun their prey. Right now, that's you. In!
Episode 2 begins with the Doctor confronting the Shalka that have just invaded the home, but he swiftly decapitates one and kills the other one as well, and they all run away, but he explains that, he didn't kill them. Yeah, and it's all close-ups when they're running as well, so you can't see anything. He explains that he didn't...
the running animation is just the background going by, and the character is just bobbing up and down.
Classic. It's classic. But he says that he doesn't kill, but these guys are made of goop, and their bodies is both basically just a scab, so they can survive in goop form quite easily, which means it's okay to decapitate them and blow them up and shit, because it doesn't really matter. Yeah. And even though when he blows them up, he assumes that the day is over. Why would you assume that the day is saved if you know that they can survive outside of their bodies when you destroy their bodies?
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway,
I don't know.
But they run away, and eventually he triggers a bomb. There's some... or he sets a fuse and blows them up. There's some nice dialogue here though, where the characters are like, you're not human, are you, Doctor? Like, where are you from? Like, what are you? And the Doctor's like, oh, it's very nice of you to say that I'm not human. Thank you very much for saying that, and I'm slightly annoyed. Which again, very Doctor answers. It feels they do a good job capturing the feel of the character. Which is hard to do in 2003 Flash animation on a random internet thing.
Yes, the writing is fairly strong here. It's good that they got somebody who had 12 years of experience writing for Doctor Who books and audio dramas, so...
Yeah,
sure. Rather than just getting a random stranger who's never touched the show before.
Yeah, and then the Doctor is like, okay, cool. So they set a fuse, they blow up the Shalka, and he's like, job done. We hear the
Yeah.
town start celebrating. Everyone's happy. They're like, they're fucking all making noise again. He's like, hell fucking yeah. Another win for the Doctor. The army are deciding to show up to come and save everybody now and ship them out, even though they feel like I should have done that before. But the Doctor is like, okay, time to head back. He goes to where the TARDIS is. Lo and behold, the TARDIS ain't there, pal. TARDIS is just not there. So he's like, what more have I got to do? But where is the TARDIS, I wonder? So let's go down and find out as we head underground.
So when Richard E. Grant finds the TARDIS is missing, he says the word rumpety.
Rumpety.
You know what? So this line was improved by Richard E. Grant. Nobody knows what the word rumpety means.
It means fuck.
And when Richard E. Grant was asked about it, he was like, I don't know, it's just a word I made up.
It means fuck.
So, rumpety.
Oh, fuck. You know? But we follow where the TARDIS is underground. It's quite a nice shot of the TARDIS sitting atop this hill as one of the Shalka approach it to blast through the doors with its voice. It screams at the doors, which kind of showcases the power, because we know the TARDIS doors are supposed to be impenetrable. There's supposed to be no way anything can get through those doors, but the scream does it. And I fucking hate the scream, by the way. It's the same noise.
Yes.
Just played on repeat, and it's played so often. So often, you know.
But yeah, the colors in this show is kind of beautiful. It's kind of really nice art, you know. It's
Still
nice...
images, yeah. The still images
Yeah.
of certain scenes, like that's a really nice frame. This is there was a lot of care put into the color and the lighting of this frame. It's when people start moving and talking that the budget starts really showing, you know. But I don't really have a big problem with the art style.
Yeah, the designs are all solid. The colors are all solid. Like everyone's doing as good as they possibly can with this low budget, this limited technology, this very short time scale. Like, I'm surprised this even got made in this time scale. It's insane.
Yeah, it is. And we go into the TARDIS, and it's also insane because it's fucking stunning. And it kind of shares some similarities with the TARDIS that we currently have with Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor, in that it's very big. There's a lot of open space. There's a big spiral staircase all the way around. But the center control piece is like this old Victorian thing, and there's like this again, the use of the color green with this Doctor. You know, there's like green carpeting and stuff around, and it makes it look really fucking cool. And it feels lived in. It feels like a TARDIS with personality and texture, and like people use it and stay in it, which is the thing that we don't get with the new design of the TARDIS that we have, which is insane to me that this low budget 2003 internet show has a better looking TARDIS than the one we currently have, you know? Like,
you know, I just wound up watching the episode Rose again yesterday with my mum, and that reveal of the TARDIS is fucking amazing. Just both this Scream of a Shalka and Rose really know how to reveal the TARDIS, and sort of like there's an ambience to the TARDIS rather than just stale and white, and it feels like you're at a hospital, you know?
Yeah.
This has ambience. This feels lived in. This feels gothic, you know? It's great.
It is stunning. And there's two big reveals in this scene as we get to meet the Doctor's companion, who we did already spoil earlier in this podcast. Yes. It is Sexbot Master. The Master is the Doctor's companion in this, which they don't immediately reveal he is a robot. That's not until the next episode.
I think it's the next episode.
His face falls off. Yeah. And so we're just left to assume, holy shit, the Doctor and the Master are traveling together, which is a storyline that will come back in Doctor Who with Capaldi and Missy.
So during the early stages of production, there wasn't going to be any returning villains or characters from the classic era, but suddenly the producer for this got made redundant, and a new producer came in and demanded there must be a link to the past. Their suggestion was either the Cybermen or the Sea Devils, which, imagine if this was the Sea Devils, we would be screaming.
Fucking hate it. Yeah, I would hate it.
So Paul Cornell originally toyed with the idea of this character being a hologram of a previous Doctor. he wanted the Fifth Doctor because the kind personality would bounce off of the harder and harsher personality of Richard E. Grant's Doctor, which could have been interesting to hear very dynamic together.
Sure, it's an interesting idea.
But suddenly he was like, holograms are kind of overused. Why not do it a robot? Why not bring in the Master? And, the whole Master dying to save the Doctor, to try and save the Doctor or the Doctor's wife. I can't remember, but I just said it like half an hour ago, but the idea of the Master dying and then the Doctor wanting to save the Master's life by turning him into a robot who, I guess he's tethered to the TARDIS because he can't leave the TARDIS. He's kind of like the security for the TARDIS here, is my idea of what the character is. Which I think is kind of cool. Yeah. It's an interesting dynamic potential for the Master and the Doctor. We talk about how... Just last time we talked about how Davros is a character who's overused almost, and it's like you need to retire some characters sometimes rather than just constantly bringing them back from the dead.
Yeah.
Here, there's a new interpretation of what the Master is. He's tethered to the TARDIS. I would have been very interested to see where this dynamic goes. Like, would the Master try to escape and just turn evil again, or... what would happen? I'd be very interested to find out what would happen to this version of the Master. It's really interesting.
It is. There's a lot you could do with it. It's a peculiar. It's a very out of the box character idea to bring back for the Master to do. Like just the Master being a companion, but being a robot on top of it adds a lot of questions. And I didn't hate it. We'll never ever find out what could have been, but it is interesting. But he defeats...
to flash forward 5 years later, in The Last of the Time Lords, as David Tennant is holding the dying Master in his hands, and he's like, "Please regenerate. We can travel the world together." Russell T Davies was thinking of this version of the Master when he wrote that line, so there's some inspiration there. Which again, which again, you pointed out that Missy wound up traveling with the Doctor, and that was a really interesting dynamic because Missy was allowed to grow and evolve, which a lot of Doctor Who villains aren't allowed to do.
And the Master here quickly defeats the Shalka that comes in by producing a sound bubble that sends it flying out of the TARDIS, and he's like, ha ha ha, I'm so cool. And then we fade out to black again and come in to the army rounding everybody up, evacuating them out of the town, doing it from surnames first, which feels like a weird way of doing it, but that's just what they're doing, I guess. And we then go to the Doctor and a soldier guy who works for UNIT.
I guess
we see a unit folder. This is Army Unit. This is classic Who Army Unit. And
I do wonder if they wanted to try and use the Brigadier, but because of copyright issues, they just had to settle on this random soldier instead. This guy is fucking boring. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. It is very dull. There's some interesting little lines where, especially when he's like, "Hey, we have to put ourselves, like the Shalka are there to kill people, so we have to put ourselves in between that, and we do that so that you get to be eccentric and weird, Doctor. Like we're the ones actually risking ourselves, so you can be all kooky and quirky and kind of keep yourself out of it." But they start to try and like formulate a plan of what's going on and where the Shalka are and how they got there. And it's relatively dull and goes on a little bit long, and there's not that much to talk about. I don't really have much else to dissect in that scene, as we go into the next scene of Alison and her boyfriend driving away. I said earlier, why don't they just leave the town? Totally forgot this happened because it's so brief when they're in the car escaping. And, her boyfriend's very upset because he's like, this is my home. I don't want to be leaving my home. I don't want to start over. And then there's an explosion. Or it's not an explosion. There's a Shalka on the road. And then there's an explosion. Yeah. And the car kind of crashes and Alison's like falling into the fire. And it's like, oh no, she's going to die. And very classic way of ending a Doctor Who episode with somebody about to die that's not going to die. And That's the end of this episode. It's a 10-minute long episode where nothing fucking goes on. Absolutely nothing goes on. Except we get, I guess the most important stuff is the master introduction.
Yeah, the master introduction would be the one thing to keep me coming back to the next episode if I was watching this weekly back in the day, you know. I'd be like, oh, that's an interesting interpretation.
For 10 minutes.
Yes.
It probably takes that long just to load the web page back then, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, that was episode 2.
That was episode 2. So brief, man. So brief.
Yeah, well, at least it doesn't overstay its welcome, I guess.
True. But let's jump into part 3 of 6.
Hello! This is so unexpected. Is there someone more famous further back in the monster? Ah, there the old girl is. It's been lovely, but I must be going.
What are you?
No, it's how are you and how are you?
I am Prime, War Chief of the Shalka Confederacy.
And that's who are you? I'm the Doctor. I'm from a highly advanced alien species, entirely different league to you. I only come to this planet for the wine and the total eclipses, and I do love a nice old-fashioned invasion. I think this lot could certainly do with a spot of regime change. What a turnout! There must be...
A bridgehead force of 2,000 Shalka. That's the information you wanted, isn't it?
Shalka, eh? Never heard of you. So forgive me, but you can't be all that. Aha! I like your wormhole. Oh dear, do you call it that?
Episode 3 of The Scream of the Shalka begins with the Doctor chatting with some soldier boys. And they're like, here, have a gun. You love guns. And the Doctor's like, no, never give me a gun again. Never offer that
I
to
am
me.
under duress. Do not give me a gun.
Which is a decent, you know, it's pretty in character for the Doctor we know to not want to use weaponry, you know, very famously like Matt Smith's Doctor and David Tennant's Doctor, probably the most outspoken about it. Both, I think, used guns still.
Yeah.
But it feels like the Doctor, and it's the opening scene to this because it immediately fades to black, so it is purely there just for us to understand a bit more about who this Doctor is and what they believe and what they function with as they're going through it. We then cut to Allison being experimented on by the Shalka. They're obviously, we find out they're planting something in her head, but we don't quite know what they're doing yet. We just see them scratching away. There's some light body horror in this story as well, which is kind of fun, I guess. You know, like, who doesn't like a bit of body horror?
But you know, we're like a minute 40 into this, and it's already faded to black twice. It's extremely jarring.
It is, and there's a lot of kind of feeling like disconnected scenes in this one, and like the other ones kind of have a driving plot throughout. This one, not so much a driving plot throughout, more like, okay, we need to get exposition here, here, and here. Let's move the Doctor along into those. The next scene we get is a bit weird, of the Doctor inside one of the caves with some soldiers, and he has this weird like back and forth rivalry with the commander of the soldiers, where the commander's like, you can't give orders, Doctor, I'm the one that gives orders. And then the Doctor gives orders anyway, and the soldiers listen, and he's like, ha, they listened to me, fuckhead. Yeah, I'm so fucking better than you. But they only listen because there's this giant massive Shalka that comes up, and the Doctor explains that it's many thousands of Shalka molded into one, because they're mostly liquid bodies, so they can change their outer appearance to fit, and they can blend together into whatever way they want, which is a really cool idea for Alien. That's a really cool Alien idea.
And this is the stuff where, you know, they couldn't do this in the classic series. They can barely do it in the new series. You know what I mean? So
yeah, they could maybe do it now.
It's more of a fantasy kind of. Yeah, we can do it now.
But yeah, but like literally, like just this past series, maybe they would have the budget to do it. You know, and this one gets a bit weird, where the Doctor gets the guys to throw the grenades to make noise, which scares off the soldiers more than the worm.
Yeah.
And then the Doctor jumps into the worm's mouth and goes yee-haw as it rides him away.
The doctor says, "Take me home, big boy." And that's a ad-lib from Richard D. Grant, which I kind of like. It's kind of funny.
I liked it. Yeah, I did like it. It doesn't fit necessarily with the Doctor that we've been seeing so far, but it does make him more likable as a character, and again feel like the Doctor. Going forward, we get a scene with the Master in the TARDIS, which is very bizarre. It's a very bizarre little scene where the Doctor phones the TARDIS, but it goes to voicemail, and so we hear the answering machine message, which is the Doctor drunk, leaving a message being like, "Hey, you've reached the TARDIS, whatever." But he's clearly drunk with the Master, and the Master's like, "Oh fuck, we should probably delete that and re-record." And like, 100% these two are banging, 1,000,000,000%. There's no other way around that.
With this more camp version of the Master, who is played by a gay man, my headcanon is that they are in a relationship here. You know, even in a series proper, Peter Capaldi said, "Hey, I had a man crush on the Master as a kid." You know, they have an attraction. You know.
Well, I mean, like Missy goes on to explain that their relationship is above. We just covered this in that episode. You know, it's above mere just human romantic attraction. They're sophisticated beings. You know, it's a complex thing.
I just realized the next story we're covering also has a Master. So that's gonna be fun.
A lot of Master, yeah. A lot of Master.
So apparently in 2003 there was a competition where if you phoned this number, you would hear an alternative message from Richard E. Grant as the Doctor. And this was a competition where people would phone in, listen to Richard E. Grant, and they could win a life-size cardboard cutout of his version of the Doctor.
Interesting. I wonder who won that, and if they still have.
I don't know. Maybe nobody won it. Who is calling that number for a?
Maybe it was a lie. But yeah, it's a fun little scene. Then the Doctor goes on to meet more Shalka, specifically like the Shalka Queen, I guess, because they need to have a villain that can explain exposition. There needs to be a leader villain that can be like, "Aha, actually, I'm the bad guy. Let me explain what's going on." And they're an interesting species, I guess, the Shalka, because they're like, "Hey, we're just here to take over the planet. That's what we want to do. We're just going to do it slowly. We're just going to take our time. We're a whole empire. We're not doing this because we're struggling or because we're dying or we need help. We just love taking over stuff. Just fucking love it. Absolutely love taking over planets." And the Doctor's like, "Awesome. Superb. Good for you. I'm just going to go." Which is because obviously, you know, this is the Doctor with all of his trauma that you explained previously, and how he doesn't actually want to be the hero anymore. He doesn't want to be traveling, and so him just being like, "Okay, cool, peace out."
He just
unexpected.
wants to get to the TARDIS, which is really interesting for the Doctor. Like, just the idea that something really happened in his life, but he does not want to be the hero anymore, is really fascinating.
But he can't help himself when he sees Allison in trouble, because then he's like, okay, like almost instinctively he goes in to help, you know, which is a really nice little character beat. I really like it. That's it feels like the Doctor, you know. That's the characterization is very strong. I like it.
Yeah, apparently this is what the second producer came in, because she was recently at college or something at the time, and she just learned about the fucking hero's journey, and she's like, "Hey, what if the Doctor goes on a hero's journey?" And you know, that's a fascinating idea, because the Doctor is always kind of like the stale character who always does the right thing. You know, the Doctor never, apart from the Seventh Doctor, I guess the Seventh Doctor was the first. Actually, the first Doctor had an arc, but had the same hero's arc. You know, in the first episode, he's fucking smashing cavemen's head in, and by the time he ends his run as the first Doctor, he's like, "Yeah, I want to be a hero now." But most Doctors don't really go on an arc, really.
Yeah.
Fucking Shutigawa didn't go on an arc.
He did not. He started and ended the same. If anything, he regressed a little bit. But the Doctor ends up having to take the Shalka Queen into the TARDIS, which gets a slight objection from the Master, but he quickly turns him off with the remote control, which is the reveal that the Master is actually a robot, which is an interesting reveal that kind of doesn't make sense in the episode, because, like, obviously we don't have any of that background information on why the Master's a robot, or like why any of these things are actually happening. So when the reveal of the Master being a robot, I was like, oh shit, oh, what does that even mean? You know, why is this?
And, you know, this was intended for new viewers. Are new viewers going to be able to understand, okay, who is this guy? What's his history with the Doctor? Why is he a robot? Is that a surprise for us? Or is this something that is new for the character? It just gets into the lore, and it just gets confusing, because it's like, it just falls into the same traps as the TV movie, which opens up with a Master's execution from the Daleks, and and then the Master turns into a snake man, and remember the Master was a snake man?
You do, yeah. It's kind of just a continuous problem in Doctor Who. Yeah. It is like you got the same at the 60th anniversary. You need to have seen series 4, and they do their best, but really it doesn't really work unless you've seen series 4. And so it's like, okay, so unless you go into the show already having knowledge of the show, there's certain points you can start Doctor Who, and certain points you probably shouldn't, you know.
It's something that Russell T Davies did so well when he brought back the show in 2005, because you didn't need to have any knowledge about the show previously. You know, it explained things to the audience. It wasn't chained to previous continuity. It was just a brand new interpretation of the show. And then Russell T Davies tried to do the same thing last year, and it's like, oh no, in order to watch the 60th anniversary, you have to, in order to start Ncuti Gatwa's run, you need to watch the 60th anniversary, because there's a lot you'll miss out on if you don't watch the 60th anniversary. To watch the 60th anniversary, you need to have knowledge about series 4. It's like, it's just homework, you know? It really is just homework.
It is, but at the same time, it's kind of just a never-ending problem you're going to have with a show that is as old and as big as Doctor Who is, and is formatted the way that Doctor Who is. Like, Star Trek can get away with it because there's not a main character in Star Trek. Yeah. There's just Starfleet. You know, you can just be like, okay, in this series of Star Trek, we're just going to follow a different spaceship. It's going to have a different crew on it, so you can go in not having any knowledge of Star Trek. With Doctor Who, it's like, okay, there's the Doctor. Okay, so in every series, it's going to be the Doctor. There's not a different ship we can go into. You're going to just have to... You just got to start in episode 1, baby. Just got to start in episode 1, work your way through it. That's...
An unearthly child. Start there.
Yep, which you can't. Which you actually can't. You can't start on an unearthly child. So just don't watch it. Just don't watch it. Just don't watch Doctor Who. We get a scene. It goes on for quite a bit. This next scene with the Doctor and Allison chatting back and forth. I don't really remember if they discover any interesting information here, other than the Doctor hints at a dark past but doesn't want to go into it. He makes a joke about using an inhaler because the air is all weird down there. You know,
I guess this incarnation of the Doctor has asthma.
I guess,
which is an interesting trait for his version to have.
But eventually they get led by the Shalka Queen to the wormhole, which is how they transport between the center of the Empire and back. But with a press of a button, they can change that wormhole into a black hole. How any of that physics works, don't worry about it. And you know, they're like, hey, we use this black hole as a toilet. That's what we this is where we dispose of our waste. It's a toilet. This is a toilet hole. This is a toilet black hole. And they throw the Doctor into it, and that's the cliffhanger for the episode, is the Doctor falling into a black hole, which that's a pretty banging classic Who cliffhanger. That's and it also, the transition from that black hole into the outro credits, superbly done. That's a superb little transition there. Like,
You know, the animators are really working as hard as they possibly
there's
can.
some
They're
nice
doing
shots. There's some
really
some of
good
the
work
art.
here.
Some of the artwork is genuinely very nice in this, for
Like
sure.
that silhouette of Master crouched over the TARDIS console.
Oh,
they
yeah.
cut back to a few times is great. I love it.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm a big fan of the TARDIS. I am a big fan of the TARDIS. Yeah, for sure.
It's like one of the best TARDISes.
Tardai.
Tardai. But yeah, probably the second
okay.
best episode we've
I
covered.
would have, yeah. The issue of it being 10-minute episodes and 6 episodes is pacing just becomes fucking abysmal in the middle parts, and I got really bored watching this. And I watched all 6 episodes in one go because I was like, it's 70 minutes. Thereabouts, you know, like I could just pump this out and like it's not gonna be fine. Oh my god, it was the longest 70 minutes of my life.
Yeah, I can't imagine back in the day of watching this weekly. I'd be annoyed.
Just
you
wait
know,
for it to be
10
done.
minutes.
I'd just wait for it to be done. Or maybe you'd wake up in the morning time, get yourself a cup of coffee, stick on, watch 10 minutes before heading out the door for work or school or something, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's like maybe you could find ways to make it work. But yeah, it would be annoying for sure. But those are the first 3 episodes of The Scream of Shalka. Fine. There's some really good stuff. There's some good characterization. There's some nice artwork. It just suffers from pacing and budget. Those are really the 2 big things that really hold it back a bit, you know?
It's kind of hard to engage with something that looks like this on a limited budget. You know what I mean? It's like it feels more like it should be an audio drama that's like helped along with some like comic book images. You know what I mean? But
as an audio, it would be a good audio. Like, although, but then again, like the thing that I kind of like the most about it is the artwork. Like those, not the animation, but the still frames of some of the shots are the thing that I'm like, okay, this makes this watchable for me. Because every now and again there'll be a shot where I'm like, fuck yeah, that looks nice, awesome. You know, where the scripting is dull. Yeah, the
color
is
palette is great.
Yeah.
It's fine for what it is.
Considering the budget they had, where it was going, the year it was made, like everything is kind of working against them, and this is definitely probably the best thing that they could have come out with, and it's genuinely it's worthwhile. You know, I'm not upset that it exists.
I understand why this won technical awards, because it is a technical achievement, as weird as that sounds. Like it looks better if you go onto YouTube and look up the Critic web cartoons. Those look fucking dreadful in comparison.
Also, I'm just I'm kind of annoyed it's not available on iPlayer. They've done such a good job of getting random ass fucking animated Doctor Who stuff on BBC iPlayer that looks terrible and nobody's going to watch, you know? So, like, why not just stick this on as well? Like, just for the sake of preserving it, you know? Like, this is a thing from the early days of the internet, the early days of online BBC. It is a complete time capsule of the period. I 100% think this should be on iPlayer with the rest of the Doctor Who stuff, so...
Yeah, especially since it was made it was available for free back in the day, you know. Everything that was available for free back in the day online should still be available for free 100%. You shouldn't have to pay £6 to get the DVD for what was essentially free back in the day. That's bizarre, but the DVD is fine. The DVD has some good special features on it for sure.
It is loaded with special features. I did see. Yeah. But hey, that brings us to the end.
Not too bad.
Not too bad. Maybe we'll change our tone next week. As I said, I kind of expect next week to maybe be a shorter episode, but there is some more behind-the-scenes stuff to go into next week when we look at parts 4 through 6 and finish our dive into Scream of the Shalka. And then after that, it'll be the news. And hey, we have only got 1, 2, 3 more stories before we're done for the year.
insane. It's been such a quick year.
It has been. It has been a crazy
insane.
fast year. Yeah, yeah. But the cycle begins again. Another year done.
Yep.
Almost.
I need to start thinking about what we're gonna do next year soon.
You do.
We're
yeah.
almost
Well,
there.
you've got like March. You have some stuff in March planned out. But yeah, it's crazy to think that we did War Games in March. That feels like a lifetime ago.
Oh my
doing
god,
War
it
Games.
does. We spent 5 weeks on that. Then we did 5
10
weeks
parts.
of Torchwood.
Yeah, we did do 5 weeks of Torchwood in August time. In between those, we had the new series of Doctor Who, which also feels like a lifetime ago.
Yes.
You know? Gee whiz.
Yeah, the year feels long and short at the same time. I don't understand what's going on.
Thing. It's a tricky thing, time, isn't it? I don't think anyone's quite figured it out yet. Except Einstein kind of figured it out with relativity. But anyway, we will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Goodbye.
Bye.